Maggie Colton pressed her broken fingers into the scorching Montana dirt and dragged herself forward. 6 inches, maybe 8. Blood filled her mouth and she spat it out, watching it darken the dust. Her left eye was swollen shut. 3 of her ribs screamed with every breath she forced into her lungs. Somewhere behind her, she could still hear the wagon wheels fading. Her husband's men driving away, certain she'd be dead before sunset. She stopped crawling, rolled onto her back, stared up at the merciless July sun, and whispered, "Just let me go." If you're already hooked on Maggie's story, hit that subscribe button and follow her journey all the way to the end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The first thing Caleb Mercer noticed was the buzzards. 3 of them circling low over the trail, about a quarter mile ahead, patient the way only death's messengers could be. He pulled his chestnut mare to a stop and squinted against the afternoon glare. "Easy, Juniper," he murmured, patting the horse's neck. Probably just a coyote got itself killed. But something in his gut told him otherwise. 3 years running a ranch outside Elk Bend had taught him to trust that feeling. He'd ignored it once before back in Kansas. Never again. He spurred Juniper forward. The woman lay face down in the middle of the trail, one arm stretched ahead of her like she'd been trying to crawl. Her dress, what was left of it, was torn nearly to rags. Dark hair matted with blood and dirt spread across the ground. She wasn't moving. Caleb was off his horse before Juniper fully stopped. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering, afraid to touch her and cause more damage. "Ma'am." His voice came out rough. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. He pressed 2 fingers gently to her neck. A pulse weak, thready, but there. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. All right, you're alive." He eased her onto her back as carefully as he could manage. What he saw made his stomach drop. Her face was a wreck. Left eye swollen completely shut, lips split deep enough to need stitching, bruises, layered on top of bruises, some fresh purple, others already turning that sick yellow-green that meant they were days old. This wasn't a single beating. Somebody had been hurting this woman for a long time, and today they'd decided to finish the job. Her fingers were broken. At least 3 of them on her right hand bent at wrong angles. Defensive wounds. She'd fought. "Good for you," Caleb whispered. "You fought back." He dampened his bandana from his canteen and pressed it gently to her cracked lips. A tiny sound escaped her, not quite a moan, more like a wounded animal's whimper. Her one good eye cracked open, unfocused, wild with terror. She jerked away from him, or tried to. The movement sent her body into a spasm of pain, and she cried out, curling into herself. "Don't," she rasped. "Don't touch me. Please don't. I ain't gonna hurt you." Caleb held both hands up where she could see them, palms open. "My name's Caleb Mercer. I got a ranch about 4 miles from here. I'm just trying to help." Her eye locked onto his face, searching for the lie. He'd seen that look before on horses that had been beaten by bad owners. Trust destroyed so completely it might never come back. "You hear me, ma'am? Nobody's hurting you anymore." "Leave me," she whispered. "Just leave me here." "Can't do that." "I said leave me." Her voice cracked. "I'm not worth the trouble." Something about those words hit Caleb like a fist to the chest. Not worth the trouble. Someone had taught her that. Someone had beaten that belief into her, along with the bruises. "Well, ma'am, I reckon that ain't your decision to make right now." He kept his voice steady the way he talked to spooked colts. "I'm going to pick you up and put you on my horse. It's gonna hurt, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm not leaving you here for the buzzards." She stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her broke, not in a bad way, but like a dam giving way. Tears cut tracks through the dirt and blood on her face. "They'll come back," she whispered. "They'll come back, and they'll kill you too." "They can try." He slid one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her knees. When he lifted her, she screamed a short, bitten-off sound that told him she'd had practice swallowing her pain. He settled her against his chest and felt her whole body trembling like a leaf in a storm. "I know it hurts," he said quietly. "Just hold on." Getting her onto Juniper took some doing. She was barely conscious by the time he mounted behind her, one arm wrapped around her waist to keep her steady. Her head lolled against his shoulder. "What's your name?" he asked as they started moving. "Maggie," she breathed. Then nothing. The ride to Pine Ridge Ranch took nearly an hour at the careful pace Caleb kept. Twice Maggie surfaced from unconsciousness, both times thrashing and crying out names he didn't recognize. Both times he tightened his hold and talked her through it, his voice low and steady. "You're safe, Maggie. Nobody's getting to you. Just breathe." Tom Whitfield spotted them first. The young ranch hand dropped the fence rail he'd been carrying and came running, his face going white when he saw the woman in Caleb's arms. "Good Lord, boss. What happened?" "Found her on the trail. She's been beaten bad. Get Ruth." "Ruth's already at the house. She brought supper over." "Good. Tell her to get the spare room ready. Hot water, clean cloth, whatever she needs." Tom took off at a sprint toward the house. By the time Caleb reached the porch, Ruth Calloway was already standing in the doorway, sleeves rolled to her elbows, face set in that iron expression she wore when something needed doing. At 58, Ruth had buried a husband, built a business, and survived more hardship than most men would stomach. Nothing rattled her. But when Caleb carried Maggie through the door, even Ruth's composure cracked. "Lord have mercy," she breathed. "Put her in the back room. Gently now." "I know, Ruth. Her fingers are broken. I can see that. Those bruises aren't all fresh. Some are a week old, maybe more." "I know." Ruth's jaw tightened. "Who did this?" "Don't know yet." She said they, more than one. He laid Maggie on the bed as carefully as he'd ever done anything in his life. She moaned, her good eye fluttering open again. "Where?" she started. "My ranch," Caleb told her. "You're safe." Ruth moved in beside the bed, her hands gentle but efficient, as she began assessing the damage. "Sweetheart, I need to check your ribs. It's going to hurt. You squeeze my hand if you need to." Maggie's gaze darted between Ruth and Caleb, still wary. "This is Ruth Calloway," Caleb said. "She runs the best kitchen in Elk Bend, and she's tougher than anyone I know. You're in good hands." Ruth shot him a look. "Out? Now." "I'll be right outside the door. You'll be in the kitchen making yourself useful. Boil more water, and send Tom for Dr. Price. Hannah's 30 miles away and then Tom better ride fast." Ruth turned back to Maggie, her voice softening immediately. "Now, sweetheart, let's see what they did to you." Caleb left, but he didn't go far. He stood in the hallway, fists clenched at his sides, listening to Ruth's murmured words and Maggie's occasional sharp intakes of breath. Every sound of pain tightened something in his chest that he'd spent 3 years trying to keep locked down. He'd left Kansas to get away from this, from violence, from broken people he couldn't save, from the guilt of arriving too late. And now it had found him on his own trail. Tom appeared at the end of the hall, hat in hand. "Boss, you want me to ride for Dr. Price?" "Yeah, push hard. Tell her it's bad." "What happened to her?" "Someone tried to kill her, Tom. That's what happened." The young man's face hardened. "I'll be back with the doc by morning." He turned to go, then stopped. "Should I tell the sheriff?" Caleb hesitated. Maggie's words echoed in his head. "They'll come back. They'll kill you too." Whoever had done this, she was terrified of them. Bringing in Sheriff Yates before he knew the full story could put her in more danger. "No, not yet. Just get Hannah." Tom nodded and was gone. An hour later, Ruth emerged from the bedroom. She closed the door softly behind her, and for the first time since Caleb had known her, she looked like she might cry. "How bad?" he asked. 4 broken ribs, 3 broken fingers, bruises covering her arms, her back, her legs. Split lip needs stitching. But I did what I could. That left eye, I don't know if she'll see right out of it again." Ruth paused. "And the old bruises, Caleb. She's been beaten before, many times. This wasn't the first." I figured. "There's something else." Ruth lowered her voice. "She's got rope burns on her wrists. They tied her up before they did this." Caleb's hands curled into fists so tight his knuckles went white. He turned away, staring at the wall jaw working. "Did she say anything?" he asked. "A name. Douglas. She kept saying, 'Douglas, please stop,' over and over." Ruth wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Caleb, whoever Douglas is, that woman is terrified of him down to her bones. This isn't just some robbery gone wrong. This is personal. Her husband. That'd be my guess. The way she said the name, that's not how you say a stranger's name. That's how you beg someone you loved to stop hurting you." The silence between them was heavy. "She can stay as long as she needs," Caleb said. "Of course she can. But Caleb..." Ruth fixed him with a hard stare. "If whoever did this comes looking for her, you know what that means for you, for this ranch." "I know what it means." "Do you?" "Because 3 years ago, you came to Montana to get away from trouble. You told me yourself you were done with guns and done with fighting. I was wrong." Ruth studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Because that girl in there needs someone who won't run." She headed for the kitchen. "I'll make broth. She needs to eat when she wakes." Maggie woke in the dark. For one terrible moment, she was back in the wagon hands, tied Virgil Kane's cold voice, telling her they were going somewhere no one would find the body. Then the pain hit real immediate grounding, and she remembered. The trail, the cowboy, his arms lifting her. She was in a bed, clean sheets, a quilt that smelled like lavender and cedar. Moonlight through a window showed a simple room. Wood walls, a dresser, a chair. In the chair sat the cowboy. Caleb. He was asleep, his chin dropped to his chest, a rifle laid across his knees. He was guarding her. The realization hit her so hard she almost sobbed. She pressed her good hand against her mouth to keep silent, but a sound escaped anyway. A strangled thing halfway between a gasp and a cry. Caleb's eyes snapped open instantly. His hand went to the rifle, then eased when he saw her looking at him. "You're awake," he said quietly. "How's the pain?" "Why are you here?" she asked instead of answering. "Somebody's got to keep watch. You don't even know me. Don't need to. You don't know what I've done, what they say I've done." Caleb leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "All right. What do they say you've done?" Maggie looked away. The moonlight caught the tears on her face. "My husband, Douglas Colton. He's a merchant in Missouri. She stopped, started again. "He's been selling whiskey to the reservations, illegally, poisoning people. I found his ledgers, dates, names, amounts, everything." "And you confronted him." A bitter laugh scraped out of her throat. "I was stupid enough to think he'd stop, that he'd listen to me, his wife." "What happened?" "He broke my arm. That was the first time." She said it flatly, like reporting the weather. "After that, it was whenever I mentioned it. A black eye here, a cracked rib there. He told me if I ever spoke a word to anyone, he'd say I was part of it. That I helped him. That no court would believe a woman over her husband." "So you ran." "I took the ledgers, copies of everything. I was going to take them to the federal marshal in Helena." Her voice broke. "I almost made it. 2 days out of Missouri, his men caught up to me. Virgil Kane and another one I didn't recognize. They took the ledgers, beat me, put me in a wagon." She fell silent. "And left you on the trail," Caleb finished. "Virgil wanted to shoot me. The other one, he said Douglas wanted me alive. They argued about it. Virgil hit me again and I stopped hearing anything after that." She touched her swollen eye carefully. "I woke up in the dirt. They were gone. I figured Virgil won the argument and just didn't bother wasting a bullet." Caleb was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath it like a river under ice. Your husband sent men to kill you over some ledgers. Over money. The whiskey operation brings in thousands. If those records reach the Marshal, Douglas loses everything. His business, his standing, his freedom. She turned to look at Caleb directly. That's why you need to let me go. As soon as I can walk, I need to disappear. If Douglas finds out you helped me, let him find out. You don't understand. He has money. He has connections. Virgil Kane is... She shuddered. Virgil doesn't just follow orders. He enjoys it. You saw what he did to me, and that was him being restrained. I've dealt with men like Virgil Kane before. Not like this. Not... She pushed herself up on one elbow, wincing. Mr. Mercer, I am trying to save your life. Why won't you listen? Because I spent 3 years listening to the voice that told me not to get involved. He met her eyes. Last time I listened to that voice, a family in Kansas ended up dead because I got there too late. I'm not making that mistake again. The words hung between them. What happened in Kansas? Maggie asked softly. That's a story for another night. He stood setting the rifle against the wall. You need to rest. Dr. Price will be here by morning. She's good, one of the best. A woman doctor? Only kind I trust. He moved toward the door. There's water on the table beside you. Ruth left broth warming on the stove. You hungry? Maggie shook her head, then changed her mind. Maybe. A little. When he returned with the broth, she noticed his hands. Large, rough from ranch work, but steady and careful as he held the cup for her. She couldn't use her broken fingers, and accepting his help meant letting him close closer than she'd let any man since Douglas. She flinched when his hand brushed hers. Sorry, she whispered. Don't apologize for that. Not ever. She sipped the broth slowly, watching him over the rim of the cup. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Not this. Not... She searched for the word. Kindness. Something flickered across his face. Pain maybe, or recognition. Kindness ain't special, Maggie. It's supposed to be the ordinary thing. Somebody just taught you otherwise. She set the broth down and looked at him. Really looked for the first time. Brown eyes warm, but carrying their own shadows. A scar on his chin. Lines around his mouth that came from clenching his jaw too often. This was not a man without his own damage. You lost someone, she said. It wasn't a question. Get some sleep, Maggie. Caleb. He stopped in the doorway. Thank you for not riding past. He was quiet for a moment. Wasn't an option, he said. Then he pulled the door closed, leaving it open just a crack, and settled back into the hallway chair. Maggie lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the ranch crickets, a horse shifting in the barn, the creak of the old house settling. For the first time in months, she wasn't listening for footsteps. She wasn't calculating escape routes. She wasn't bracing for a blow. She was just lying in the clean bed in a stranger's house, hurting everywhere, with a man she'd known for hours, sitting guard outside her door with a rifle across his knees. It wasn't safety. Not yet. She'd learned the hard way that safety was a lie men told you right before they proved it wrong. But it was something. Caleb didn't sleep. He sat in that hallway chair until dawn started graying the windows, rifle across his lap, listening to every sound. Twice he heard Maggie cry out in her sleep, short, sharp sounds that cut through the quiet house like knife blades. Both times he gripped the rifle stock until his knuckles ached, but he didn't go in. She didn't need another man pushing through her door uninvited. She needed to know the door would stay shut unless she wanted it open. At first light, Ruth arrived with fresh biscuits and a look that said she hadn't slept either. How is she? Ruth asked, setting the basket on the kitchen table. Woke up once, ate some broth. She's scared, Ruth. Scared in a way that goes bone deep. She tell you what happened? Her husband, merchant out of Missouri named Douglas Colton. She found out he was running whiskey to the reservations. When she tried to stop it, he turned on her. sent his men to finish the job. Ruth's hand stilled on the biscuit basket. Her own husband. She had evidence, ledgers proving everything. His men took them back. So she's got nothing. She's got nothing, and he's got every reason to make sure she stays quiet. Ruth sat down across from him, her expression shifting from sympathy to something harder. Caleb, if this man has the kind of money and reach she's describing Elk Bend isn't big enough to hide her, sooner or later someone's going to come asking questions. I know. And you know what happens to folks who get between a powerful man and what he wants. I said I know Ruth. She held his gaze. What are you planning to do? Right now, keep her alive. Get Hannah here to fix what I can't. After that, he rubbed the back of his neck. She needs those ledgers. Without proof, it's her word against his, and she's right. No court's going to take a wife's word over her husband's. Not without evidence. You're talking about going up against a man who already tried to have her killed. I'm talking about doing what's right. Ruth was quiet for a moment, then she reached across the table and put her hand over his. You remind me of my Henry. God rest him. Same stubborn streak, same fool idea that one good man can stand against the world. Did it work out for Henry? They shot him in his own barn over water rights. Ruth's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. But he died knowing he never once turned away from someone who needed help. And I've never once been ashamed of him. She squeezed his hand. You do what you need to do. I'll keep that girl fed and breathing. A sound from the back of the house made them both turn. Maggie stood in the hallway, leaning heavily against the wall, her good hand braced against the doorframe. She was pale, swaying slightly, but her one open eye was fierce. I heard you talking, she said, about the ledgers. You should be in bed, Caleb said. I should be dead. She took a careful step forward. But I'm not, and I need you both to hear something. Ruth stood moving to offer support, but Maggie held up her broken hand, a stop gesture that cost her visible pain. The ledgers his men took, those were copies. A ghost of a smile crossed her battered face. I'm a banker's daughter, Mr. Mercer. I always make copies of the copies. Caleb stared at her. You've got another set. Hidden. Before I left Missouri, I mailed a packet to the only person west of the Mississippi I trust. She looked at Ruth, then back at Caleb. A woman named Hannah Price, doctor in Montana Territory. The name landed like a thunderclap in the quiet kitchen. Ruth sat down slowly. Caleb's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Hannah Price, he repeated. The doctor I just sent Tom to fetch. You know her. Maggie's eye widened. She's our town doctor. She's on her way here right now. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Maggie's knees buckled. Caleb caught her before she hit the floor, and this time, for the first time, she didn't flinch away from his hands. She gripped his shirt with her broken fingers, not caring about the pain, and looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Relief. Disbelief. Something that might have been the first fragile seed of hope she'd allowed herself in a very long time. Maybe God hasn't given up on me after all, she whispered. Caleb helped her into a chair, and Ruth was already pouring water. And outside, the July sun was climbing over the Montana mountains, and somewhere on the road between here and Helena. Tom Whitfield was riding hard toward a doctor who didn't yet know she was carrying the evidence that could save a woman's life or get them all killed. Tom Whitfield rode through the gate at noon the next day, dust-caked and hollow-eyed from riding through the night. Dr. Hannah Price rode beside him on a gray gelding, her medical bag strapped behind her saddle, her face set with the calm urgency of a woman who'd learned long ago that panic saved nobody. Caleb met them in the yard. Thanks for coming, Hannah. Tom said it was bad. Hannah dismounted, already pulling her bag free. How bad? 4 broken ribs, 3 broken fingers, her left eye swollen shut. Ruth did what she could, but... Take me to her. Caleb led her inside. At the bedroom door, he stopped. Hannah, before you go in, there's something you need to know. It can wait. It can't. He lowered his voice. Her name is Maggie Colton. She says she mailed you a packet, documents, before she left Missouri. Hannah's hand froze on the doorknob. The color left her face so fast, Caleb thought she might faint. That packet, she whispered. That was from her. Yeah. I thought it was a mistake, some misdirected mail. I haven't even opened it. Well, you're going to want to, but first fix her up. Hannah stared at him for a beat, then pushed the door open. Maggie was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows Ruth had arranged. In the daylight, the damage was worse than it had looked by lamplight. Her face was a landscape of purple and yellow. Her broken fingers splinted with strips of wood and cloth from Ruth's handiwork. Maggie. Hannah set her bag down and pulled the chair close. I'm Dr. Price. I'm going to examine you now. Can you tell me where the worst pain is? Everywhere. Maggie's voice was flat, but mostly the ribs, left side. Hannah's hands were efficient and gentle. She worked in silence for several minutes, pressing probing, checking reflexes and responses. Maggie endured it with her jaw clenched, only gasping once when Hannah tested the mobility of her broken fingers. Ruth did good work, Hannah said finally. The ribs are cracked, not fully broken. That's lucky. Your fingers need resetting, 2 of them healed wrong already, which means they were broken before this beating. 6 weeks ago, Maggie confirmed quietly. Hannah paused. Your husband. It wasn't a question. Maggie looked at her sharply. How did you? Because I've treated women like you before, and the injuries always tell the same story. Hannah opened her bag, laying out instruments with practiced precision. I'm going to reset those fingers now. It's going to hurt badly. Do you want something for the pain? No, I want to feel it. That's not brave. That's punishment. Maybe. But I need to stay sharp. I can't afford to be foggy. Hannah studied her for a moment, then nodded. Bite down on this. She handed Maggie a folded leather strap. Scream if you need to. No shame in it. The sound that came through the closed door made Caleb's fists clench on the porch railing. Ruth, standing beside him, put a hand on his arm. She's tough, Ruth said. She shouldn't have to be. No, she shouldn't. But she is, and right now that's what's keeping her alive. A second cry, sharper than the first. Then silence. Then Hannah's muffled voice, calm and steady. 10 minutes later, Hannah emerged, wiping her hands on a cloth. Fingers are set properly now. I've bound the ribs tighter. The eye... She hesitated. I think she'll keep her sight, but there may be some lasting damage. She needs at least 2 weeks of rest before she's fit to travel anywhere. She doesn't have 2 weeks, Caleb said. Then she'll have to make the time, because if those ribs shift wrong, one could puncture a lung, and then it won't matter who's chasing her. Ruth stepped forward. I'll stay. Keep an eye on her. There's more, Hannah said. She glanced around, confirming they were alone. That packet she mentioned. I have it at my office in Helena. I almost threw it away, no return address, just my name. It felt wrong, so I kept it. Can you get it? Caleb asked. I can send for it. My assistant can bring it, but that's a 2-day round trip. That's 2 days Maggie doesn't have if her husband's men are already looking. They are. The voice came from the hallway. Maggie stood there again, gripping the doorframe, her face gray with pain from the effort of walking. Virgil Kane doesn't give up. If they left me alive, even by accident, Douglas will send Virgil back to make sure. You need to be in bed, Hannah said firmly. I need to be part of this conversation. It's my life we're deciding. Caleb looked at her, pale, swaying, held upright by nothing but willpower and fury. He pulled a chair from the kitchen table. Sit. Talk. Then bed. Maggie lowered herself into the chair, accepting Ruth's steadying hand without protest. That small gesture, letting Ruth help, wasn't lost on Caleb. She was learning to take help from the women. The men would take longer. Tell us about Virgil Kane, Caleb said. Former Army. Discharged for... Maggie swallowed. For excessive violence against prisoners. Douglas hired him 3 years ago as a security consultant. He handles the whiskey deliveries. He handles anyone who asks questions. He handled me. He's the one who beat you. He's the one who enjoyed it. Maggie's good eye was hard as stone. The other man, I don't know his name, he wanted to stop. He said Douglas didn't want me dead. Virgil told him Douglas didn't get to decide anymore. So Virgil's operating on his own, Caleb said. Partly. Douglas wants me silenced. Virgil wants me dead. There's a difference, but the result's the same if he finds me. Ruth poured coffee, pressing a cup into Maggie's good hand. How would they track you here? You were left on an empty trail. Virgil will backtrack. He'll ride the trail, find where I was, and notice I'm not there anymore. Then he'll ask questions in every town within 50 miles. A beaten woman showing up somewhere, that's not something people forget. The kitchen went quiet. She was right. Caleb had carried a half-dead woman through his front door in broad daylight. Tom had seen. Ruth had seen. It wasn't exactly a secret. Elk Bend's small, Ruth said slowly. Word travels. Has anyone in town seen her? Hannah asked. No, she hasn't left the ranch. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. But Tom rode through town to get to you, Hannah. If anyone asked him where he was going in such a hurry. Tom wouldn't talk, Ruth said firmly. Tom's 22, and he thinks keeping a secret means whispering loud. Caleb stood pacing. All right, here's what we do. Hannah, send for that packet. Fastest route possible. Ruth, you stay here with Maggie. I'll ride into Elk Bend, see what people are saying, and find out if anyone's been through town asking questions. And if they have, Maggie asked, then we deal with it. That's not a plan, that's a prayer. Sometimes that's all you've got. Maggie looked at him with that searching gaze she'd had since the first night. You were in law enforcement, before the ranch. Caleb went still. Who told you that? Nobody. The way you pace when you're thinking. The way you position yourself between me and the door without realizing it. The way you assess threats. She tilted her head. You've done this before. Deputy Sheriff, Kansas, long time ago. Why'd you quit? I told you. Story for another night. It's another night. Ruth and Hannah exchanged a glance. Ruth cleared her throat. I'll go check on something. Hannah, help me check on that something. What something? Ruth grabbed Hannah's arm and steered her toward the door. The something that's in the barn and requires both of us immediately. When they were gone, Caleb sat down across from Maggie. The kitchen was quiet, except for the ticking of the mantel clock and the distant sound of Tom working in the yard. There was a family, he said, the Dawsons, homesteaders outside of Dodge City. They'd been getting threats from a cattle company that wanted their land. Standard intimidation fences cut livestock, scattered a few shots fired in the night. He stopped. Maggie waited. They came to me, asked for help. I told them I'd ride out the next morning and look into it. His voice dropped. I should have gone that night, but I was tired and I figured one more night wouldn't matter. The cattle company wasn't going to do anything drastic. Caleb, I rode out at dawn, found the house burned. Thomas Dawson shot in the yard. His wife Sarah in the kitchen doorway. Their boy. He stopped again, and this time the pause lasted longer. Their boy Billy was 7. He'd hidden in the root cellar. He was alive, but he'd heard everything. That wasn't your fault. I could have been there. And you might have died too. Then who saves the boy? He looked at her, something raw in his expression. That's what everyone said. It didn't help. I know. When Douglas first hit me, everyone said I should leave. Easy advice. Harder to take when you're standing inside the storm. She reached across the table with her good hand. Not quite touching his, just close. You came when Maggie Colton was lying in the dirt. You didn't ride past. You didn't wait until morning. Wasn't the same. It was exactly the same. And this time you were there. He looked at her hand inches from his. He didn't take it. But he didn't pull away either. I'm going to keep you safe, Maggie. I need you to know that. I believe you're gonna try. That's not the same as believing me. No, it's not. But it's more than I've given anyone in 3 years. Take it. He almost smiled. Almost. Fair enough. The moment broke when hoofbeats sounded outside. Fast ones. Caleb was on his feet in an instant, his hand going to the revolver on the kitchen shelf. He moved to the window. Tom was running from the barn, and a rider was coming up the road at a hard gallop. Not someone Caleb recognized. Get back in the bedroom, he told Maggie. Who is it? Don't know. Go. For once, she didn't argue. She moved down the hallway, and he heard the bedroom door close. Ruth appeared from the barn, Hannah beside her, both watching the approaching rider. The man pulled up at the gate. Young Dusty, riding a horse that had been pushed hard. He wore a deputy's star on his chest. Looking for Caleb Mercer, the man called out. You found him. Caleb stepped onto the porch, hand resting casually on his hip, near his holster. Something I can help you with. Deputy Willis out of Sheriff Yates's office in Elk Bend. Sheriff sent me. The deputy dismounted, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. There's a man come through town this morning, well-dressed, riding with 2 others, asking about a woman. Said she was his wife, said she'd gone missing and he was worried for her safety. Caleb's blood ran cold, but his face stayed neutral. That's so. Described her